There have been shadowy, powerful security agencies working for tyrannical regimes throughout history. The most notorious is Nazi Germany's Gestapo. It was created to eliminate all those opposing Nazi doctrine and played a key role in the Holocaust. But did you know that the communist regime in China has a security force just as evil? In fact, some Chinese experts call it China's Gestapo, and it operates completely outside the law. Perhaps you've never heard of it, but that might be changing. When the U.S. State Department submitted its 2020 International Religious Freedom Report to Congress, Secretary of State Antony Blinken also announced sanctions against one Chinese official. His name is Yu Hui. And these sanctions are particularly significant because Yu is a former official with something called the 610 office. The 610 office is an extra-legal security force of the Chinese Communist regime. It was established with the sole purpose to persecute and completely eliminate the spiritual practice called Falun Gong. At the time of its creation, up to 100 million Chinese were practicing or learning Falun Gong. This persecution was purely a political move, a power grab by former CCP leader Jiang Zemin. It had no basis in the rule of law. In fact, many in the police and legal system at the time were practicing or sympathetic to Falun Gong. Therefore, Jiang needed a new chain of command to carry out this massive political task. And so, he created the 610 office to be the core of this new chain of command. It stood outside of the state's legal framework and was granted virtually unlimited powers. In fact, Jiang ordered the 610 office to use any means necessary and authorized them to classify any Falun Gong person killed from torture as a suicide. And keep in mind, these are the marching orders against 100 million people. To help lead the 610 office, Jiang tapped the director of the Chinese propaganda department, Liu Yunshan. As we have learned from history, before a tyrannical regime targets any group for physical elimination, they have to change the sentiment of a society towards that group via propaganda and dehumanization. The Chinese state-run media, under the direction of the 610 office, became the cornerstone of the persecution. It launched a nationwide propaganda campaign spreading blatant falsehoods and fabrications about Falun Gong. It demonized and incited hatred against anyone who practiced. Branches of the 610 office were set up across the entire country and at all levels of government, and the scale of their authority is staggering. The 610 office has been allowed to direct virtually all of China's resources at will. It could use any political branch of the CCP, state-run media, the judiciary, and the police as its thugs and hitmen. For example, in the northeastern city of Tianjin, the 610 office had employed 50 to 60 staff inside the city public security bureau, but this staff could command the city's entire 30,000 strong police force, according to one of the city's former 610 operatives, Mr. Hao Fengjun, who defected in 2005. And that's just one bureau in one city. Throughout China, 610 office agents have commonly abducted Falun Gong practitioners from their homes, held them in brainwashing and detention centers where they are tortured, sexually abused, and injected with psychotropic drugs. In fact, these horrific transformation techniques designed to break the body and mind became one of the key methods in the campaign to eliminate Falun Gong. As noted in a 2011 article in the Jamestown Foundation's China Brief, transformation and coercive thought reform are a central aspect of the agency's activities. In his book, A China More Just, human rights lawyer Gao Zhisheng describes being shocked by the horrible abuses that were commonplace in the 610's operations. The immoral act that has shaken my soul most is the 610 office and policemen's regular practice of assaulting women's genitals. Gao wrote after his 2005 investigation, in which he noted a vast majority of male and female detainees suffered extreme forms of sexual assault. Chinese human rights lawyer Guo Guoting summed it up this way: the 610 office is just like Hitler's Gestapo. For years, Chinese officials tried to hide the existence of the 610 office. In fact, standard operating procedures were to not document directives, but rather issue commands orally, or simply mark them as top secret. However, a broad range of testimonies, internal documents, and public statements over the past 20 years have unmasked the 610 office. In fact, the available evidence points a disturbing picture of a shadowy yet powerful Communist Party security force, an excessively violent organization that permeates Chinese society. It is well known only to those who control it or work for it, and of course, also to those who are terrorized by it. And so when the US State Department sanctioned Chinese official Hu Wei, it was also shining a light on one of the most feared security forces of the modern era. For many years, millions of Falun Gong practitioners in China have produced and distributed homemade pamphlets and DVDs to their fellow citizens across China. These materials debunk the CCP's propaganda, expose its human rights violations, and report on international actions seeking justice. As news of the US sanctions spread throughout China, reports have emerged of detained Falun Gong practitioners being released from custody and reunited with their families. These reports also say some Chinese officials are scrambling to hide their roles in persecuting Falun Gong. This latest round of sanctions targeting a 610 office leader specifically is likely to further amplify these trends. So yes, these sanctions do make a real difference, but they must be just the first step. Like the Gestapo, this criminal organization needs to be held to account. The international community must ensure that justice is served for the millions who have suffered terrible atrocities at the hands of the 610 office.